YTBC, what's the deal? So I was just thinking about some of the, uploaders on YouTube have been making video about fanboys and, some of today's fans being fanboys with the current fighters. And we've all been fanboys but there are some fighters that I used to be fanboys of that aren't really known on a historical level. Nobody's really going to remember these guys. Maybe some of you older heads will remember some of these guys, but one of the guys who I was a huge fan of, man, a guy by the name of Kevin Pompey. Now, he used to fight on the ESPN fight cards back in the early 90s. And he also fought on the USA Network when they had the Tuesday night fights. When I think of Tuesday night fights, I think of George Foreman, Larry Holmes, and Roberto Duran comeback fights. And I think of Kevin Pompey. Those are the four fighters that just jump out to me right away. Now, I know there was other fighters on USA Network. Roy Jones was on there coming up. Tommy Morrison was coming up. Ray Mercer would be on there. I understand that, but Kevin Pompey was a guy. Now, if you go to BoxRec and look at his record, he's 32 wins, 18 losses, and 3 draws. And some of you may say, how the hell was he somebody you like watching with a record like that? But his heart, his determination, his will, he used to remind me of Evander Holyfield. That's why I used to like him. He was like a welterweight version of Evander Holyfield. And around about 1992, that's when I think he was at his best, when he won that USBA title. And on that USA Network, on that channel, those fights, there would be a lot of USBA titles on the line. A lot of regional titles used to be on the line. And just, guys fighting for ranking spots, with the big organizations, the IBF, WBA, WBC, WBO. But Kevin Pompey was a very exciting fighter. A fight that sticks out to me is the Tyrone Trice fight, which he lost, but I thought he beat Trice in that fight. If you go look at the numbers for Kevin Pompey, just some of his CompuBox, the numbers in their fights, and his opponents, they'll throw damn near 1,000 punches, land 300-400 of them. I mean, it was pretty much toe-to-toe action when he fought. I remember the Harold Brazier fight, the first fight with him. The crowd didn't like that decision. I thought Kevin Pompey won that fight, you know what I'm saying? But a lot of people thought that Brazier won that fight. I remember when he fought Braylon Curry, Donald Curry's brother. That was another good fight. The Nick Rupa fight. And Nick Rupa, I seen him fight Buddy McGirt before. Nick Rupa, I believe that fight was a draw with Kevin Pompey, but he was an awkward guy to fight, man. Kevin Pompey will get into these fights, and you will look at the guy's record that he will fight, and they were just made for exciting fights. He will fight guys that were awkward. He will go to dudes' hometowns. I mean, he was I'm not going to say he was a complete journeyman, even though he was to some degree. But I think that'd be kind of disrespect, because he was a damn warrior, man. He came to bring it. Who else did I see him fight? Buck Smith. I remember when he fought Buck Smith. Buck Smith at the time of that fight was 123 wins with 2 losses. He had won like 105 straight fights going. I remember that fight was on ESPN. I cannot find it on YouTube, man. But I remember when he fought that fight, and they were labeling Buck Smith as the most winningest American fighter. I remember going to that fight like, who the fuck is Buck Smith? But during that telecast, I remember them saying that he beat Franklin Lang, and we know Franklin Lang beat Roberto Duran in '82. And I watched that fight, the Franklin Lang and Franklin Lang and Duran fight, and one of the damn judges actually gave the fight to Duran. If you go watch that fight, Duran probably won 3 rounds in that fight with Lang. Lang was pushing him back, jabbing him. He was counter-punching Duran. He was whooping Duran's ass. Duran looked very sluggish, and that looked like he didn't want to be there. He looked real lackadaisical in that fight with Lang. But Buck Smith upended Lang, but yeah, I remember, and that was a war. They gave it to Pompey, and that was for the USBA title, but that was a war. I cannot find that fight, man. I just remember it. But that was a back and forth fight between Smith and Pompey. I remember that fight. So yeah, I seen him fight Daryl Lattimore, and then later on, I seen him fight on a pay-per-view undercard. It was the Shannon Briggs versus France Botha. I remember that because that was actually like a week before I went to college. That was the last fight that I watched at home, and it was a damn Showtime pay-per-view. I actually watched that fight at my mom's house with my uncle. And I remember that fight. I know Marco Antonio Barrera was on the undercard. And then I remember Kevin Pompey fought Omar Shika. And Omar Shika was trying to come back. He had suffered an embarrassing loss to Tony Booth. And some of you don't know who Tony Booth is. There's actually a documentary out on him about being a journeyman. He has over 100 losses. But he had beat Omar Shika when Omar Shika was undefeated. So Shika, this is like his third fight after that loss. And Kevin Pompey was giving Omar Shika problems before that bogus stoppage. I mean, if you go watch that fight, and Kevin Pompey took that fight on like 5 or 6 days notice, and he was giving Omar Shika trouble. And Omar Shika was supposed to be, this fast rising junior middleweight, and that was a bogus stoppage though, man. But yeah, I remember that fight. That fight was on the Shannon Briggs and Franz Botha undercard. But that was when, Pompey was way past it, man. That was like that was the fall of 1999. So he was way past it. I'm talking about the Kevin Pompey that fought when he was a welterweight, probably about 90 through about 93. I mean, I was a huge Kevin Pompey fan, man. I was just a huge fan of his. Like, I wanted to see him fight anybody. Meldrick Taylor, Simon Brown, Pernell, Obakar, whoever you would have brought up, I would have picked Kevin Pompey. I mean, I had so much stock in him, man, when he would go and fight. And then, when I used to watch him on ESPN and on, the USA Network, he would lose fights, he would win fights, but every fight was exciting. I wish Felix Trinidad or Maurice Blocker would have gave him a title shot and told the fans, well, I'm going to give him a title shot because he's exciting, because that's what Mayweather's doing with Berto. Pretty much just telling us, well, he's going to bring an exciting fight, so I kind of wish, I wish, just being a huge fan of Kevin Pompey's back in the day, I wish he would have got awarded, again, like a title shot against like I said, a Maurice Blocker or whoever had the title in 93, Pernell Whitaker or Felix Trinidad, I'm sorry. I wish they would have gave him a title shot, just based on the merit that, hey, he's exciting. But to me, I think Kevin Pompey, if you look at Kevin Pompey and look at Andre Berto and you just take away, if you didn't know their names, you didn't know their resumes or anything, you just you watch both fighters fight, you could say that Berto has quicker hands. But rather than that, I would almost favor Kevin Pompey as being an overall better fighter than Andre Berto. Now, I know a lot of you going to say, I'm tripping. This dude has lost 18 times. I'm just talking about in their, at welterweight, in their hot streak at welterweight. Now, again, Kevin Pompey will fight down to his opponent's levels sometimes, but he was always in exciting fights. So, I'd rather say this. I'm not going to say he was better, but I think he was just as exciting as Andre Berto, and I think he could hold his own just as well as Andre Berto has fighting against the guys that Berto has fought. And shit, maybe Berto could handle himself the same way against the guys that Kevin Pompey fought. But, I'm not sure that Berto can beat Tyrone or could have beat Tyrone Trice. I'm not sure. Trice was a damn good fighter. He fought Simon Brown twice. And I remember when Tyrone Trice called out James Toney after a fight. I believe that was on ESPN too. He called out James Toney in the ring on the mic, and James Toney got in the ring and confronted him on the mic. I believe that's on YouTube, but I remember that on ESPN. But yeah, man, this is just a video, just me ranting about one of the guys who I used to be a fanboy of, and it's not always, the major league guys, or I'm not just going to say major league, but it's not the popular or, famous fighters that some fans are fanboys of sometimes, especially when you're younger and you're 11, 12, 13 years old, like I was during this time period. Mike Tyson is the only guy that you're going to be a fanboy of. I was a huge Mike Tyson fanboy. I mean, I was a fanboy of Mike Tyson to the point where I was trying to justify how shitty he looked against Francois Botha. you know. But Kevin Pompey is one of those dudes, man, that under the radar, I was a huge fanboy of this dude back in them time period. I'm out, y'all.